Emperor of all Russia. Emperor and Autocrat of all Russia was the official title of the Russian ruler from 1721 to 1917. It replaced the older title of Tsar and was introduced after Russia's victory in the Great Northern War. Peter the Great was the first to use this new title. He wanted Russia to be seen as equal to the major powers of Europe. After his success in the war and the signing of the Treaty of Nystad in 1721, Russia's Senate and church leaders gave Peter the title Emperor of all Russia as a way to honor his leadership. In 1722, Peter changed the rules of succession. Instead of the throne automatically going to a male heir, the emperor could now choose any worthy successor. This marked the beginning of the Russian Empire, which lasted until the monarchy was abolished in 1917. Tsar and Tsarina. Tsar, also spelled Tsar or Tsar, was a royal title used by Slavic rulers. It comes from the Latin word Caesar, meaning emperor. In Eastern Europe, Tsar meant someone with power like a Roman emperor, though Western Europeans often thought it just meant king. The first to use this title was Simeon I of Bulgaria. In Russia, it became official when Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, was crowned Tsar of all Russia in 1547. Before that, some Russian leaders, like Ivan III, used the title in letters to show their power, especially after breaking away from Mongol rule. Even after Russia switched to using the title Emperor in 1721 under Peter the Great, people still called the ruler Tsar. It remained part of official titles, especially for newly conquered areas like Poland, Georgia, and Crimea. Among many non-Russians, like Muslims and Siberian tribes, the Russian emperor was known as the White Tsar. The last person to hold the title was Nicholas II, who ruled until the Russian monarchy ended in 1917. A Tsarina was the wife of the Tsar. While the title Tsarina was no longer official after 1721, it continued as an informal term for empresses, especially Catherine the Great, who was affectionately called Mother Dear Tsaritsa. Cesarevich, Cesarvna. Cesarevich was the title for the heir to the Russian throne, used from the 18th century until the monarchy ended in 1917. It was often paired with successor, as in His Imperial Highness, the successor Cesarevich and Grand Prince. Cesarevich was different from Tsarevich, a more general term for any Tsar's son, including those from non-Russian lands. Peter the Great introduced the title after becoming emperor in 1721. His grandson Paul was the first to officially receive it, and in 1797 it became the legal title for the heir. The last to hold it was Alexei Nikolaevich, son of Nicholas II. The wife of a Cesarevich was called a Cesarevna, meaning Grand Duchess. Early in the Russian Empire, Peter the Great's daughters, Elizabeth, Anna, and Natalia, held this title. This should not be confused with Tsarevna, used before the 1700s for all Tsar's daughters and daughters-in-law. Veliki Knyaz, Grand Prince. Veliki Knyaz, meaning Grand Prince or Great Prince, was a noble title ranked below Emperor and roughly equal to Grand Duke, Archduke, or King. It was above a Duke or Sovereign Prince. In English, the title is usually translated as Grand Duke, though this isn't exact. In some languages, like Russian or German, Grand Prince and Grand Duke are seen as different, one often being a non-ruling royal family member, a cadet, and the other a hereditary ruler. Historically, Grand Princes ruled large territories called Grand Principalities, such as Lithuania, Transylvania, and Finland. These titles mostly disappeared by 1918, replaced by kings or emperors. In Russia, Ivan IV was the last ruler to use Veliki Knyaz as his highest title before becoming Tsar in the 16th century. After that, the title became a courtesy style for members of the Tsar's family, even though they didn't rule. Prince of the Blood Imperial. On January 24, 1885, Emperor Alexander III introduced the title Prince of the Blood Imperial to limit the number of Romanovs titled Grand Prince. Each Grand Prince received a large state allowance, 200,000 rubles annually, and special privileges, so the change helped reduce costs and preserve exclusivity. From then on, male-line great-grandchildren of emperors and their male-line descendants no longer received the Grand Prince title. Instead, they were called Princes of the Blood Imperial, distinguishing them from nobles with the simpler title of Prince. A Knyaz, Prince. As Russia expanded and absorbed former Kievan Rus's lands, Ivan IV, then titled Veliki Knyaz, Great Prince, was crowned Tsar in 1547. From the mid-1700s, the title Veliki Knyaz was revived for sons and grandsons of Russian emperors in the male line. The title Knyaz remained a hereditary noble title for families descended from rulers like Rurik and Gediminas, who once ruled small medieval principalities. After these lands were absorbed by Muscovite, these noble families joined the court in Moscow and kept their princely titles. In the 18th century, Tsars also granted the title Knyaz to loyal supporters like Menshikov under Peter the Great and Potemkin under Catherine the Great. Gezog Duke. Before Russia unified under Muscovite, its regions were often tributaries to Tatar Khans with no consistent noble titles. Under Peter the Great, the German title Herzog was Russified to Gezog, appearing in the emperor's full style. For example, Gezog Schleswig-Holsteinsky, I Prochaya, Duke of Schleswig-Holstein, and so on, reflecting dynastic ties to German and Danish lands. The title was also used by foreign nobles, especially French and German relatives of the Romanovs, though they weren't formally part of the Russian nobility. Marquis. The title of Marquis was used in Russia by nobles who had received the rank from foreign monarchs. Although they lived in Russia or served the Russian state, their marquisal status was not officially recognized as part of the Russian nobility. Graf, Count. Introduced by Peter the Great during his nobility reforms, the title Graf, Count, was borrowed from the German system. It was granted to noble families of ancient lineage who lacked formal titles but supported the Tsar's westernization efforts. Prestigious families like the Sheremetevs, Tolstoys, and Stroganovs received this title and often outranked even princely houses. Unlike in France or Germany, the title of Count in Russia was rare and carried significantly greater prestige. Baron. Muscovite Russia had no native baronial titles. These were introduced by Peter the Great in the early 18th century. In the new nobility system, a baron ranked above untitled nobles and below counts. Barons were addressed as "Your Wellborn" or Master Baron. There were two main types of barons in Russia: Baltic German nobles, whose existing titles were officially recognized, and new barons, often wealthy commoners elevated by the emperor, after 1721. The baronial title was abolished in 1917 after the Bolshevik Revolution, but some leaders of the White Movement, like Baron Pyotr Wrangel and Roman von Ungern-Sternberg, continued to use the title during the Russian Civil War. Dvorianin. Dvorianin was the lowest rank of hereditary nobility in Russia. The word comes from Dvor, meaning court, as they originally served at the courts of rulers or high nobles. They were free commoners who held a privileged status, often serving nobles who themselves owned serfs. Pomeshchiks. Pomeshchiks were Russian nobles who owned land called pomestye. These estates were originally granted by the Tsar in exchange for service, usually military, and were not hereditary. This system differed from votchina, where land was inherited. Baltic Knight. The Baltic noble corporations of Courland, Livonia, Estonia, and Ursel were medieval fiefdoms founded by German nobles in the 13th century, serving as vassals to the Teutonic Knights or Denmark in what is now Latvia and Estonia. These regions remained semi-autonomous from the 1500s to early 1900s under Swedish and later Russian rule. The dukes, princes, counts, and barons of these territories were gradually absorbed into the Russian nobility for their service. While Peter the Great abolished Russia's traditional knights, like boyars and vityazis, the Baltic German nobles kept their elite status, matching the power and wealth of the Russian landed gentry.